Welcome to episode 12 of Inside Politics, for teens, by teens, where I explore the politics and issues impacting our generation. I'm your host, Christina Li, and today we're exploring climate policy. For this, I've invited Haysam Azhar, who's a Forbes Under 30 scholar who is recognized for his work on climate policy. Haysam, thank you so much for being here today.
Really happy to join. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I guess my first question is, on a broad scale, what's your vision for the world and what problems are you dedicated to solving?
That's a wonderful question, and one that I don't have a definite answer to, given the uncertainty that we face today with the pandemic, and even before with inequality in the world getting worse and worse, and no prospect of climate change being of a resolution towards, a global resolution towards how we are to go about solving this crisis. So, we had the Paris Climate Agreement, and there are a lot of things that we could agree on, and we did. But then in the recent COP, we couldn't agree on carbon markets, for example, which is Article 6 of the Paris Climate Accord, which is a very, very basic tenet, right? And it was because there were some countries, developed countries, who were unwilling to budge, who were unwilling to compromise. And as a consequence of which, we had to, the result of the COP last year was very disappointing. So my vision for the world is a better, healthier world for my children and my grandchildren to live in, for them to see glaciers and meet penguins, because why not? Penguins are amazing creatures, and without ice, they'd cease to exist. And so, my hope for the world is that, it's a better place than it is 20, 30 years down the line. Am I seeing signs of that happening? I would say no. As someone who works in climate finance, there isn't a lot of finance that is being channeled towards climate adaptation and mitigation projects. And it's actually very hard to unlock investment from the private sector using public money. That's sort of the solution, or public-private partnerships is something that I that I envisage specializing in going forward. So my vision for the world is a stronger public-private partnership paradigm going forward, and a better, safer, cleaner world for my children and grandchildren to live in. Yeah.
Understood. So I know you mentioned the kind of this intersection between entrepreneurship, business, and climate. So could you talk a little bit more about that and how your work has been focused on that?
Sure. So I was working, I said currently because Friday was my last day with Climate Policy Initiative. I was working for them, and within within CPI, I was working for the Global Innovation Lab for Climate Finance, which is a startup accelerator program that is geared towards climate adaptation and mitigation financial instruments. And that sort of, brought together the entrepreneurship, the finance, as well as the business side, of climate adaptation and mitigation projects. And I worked with them for about 3 months. I worked on exploring revenue sources, alternative revenue sources for the lab. And because it is funded by public sector donors such as the UK and German governments. And due to COVID, it is harder for governments to justify spending money elsewhere, right? And so you want to, as an NGO, as a nonprofit, you want to diversify your sources of funding so you're secure and safe. So that was one of the big sort of tasks that I was given when I was at CPI and at the lab. I worked on the West African Initiative for Climate Smart Agriculture for a little bit, which is an $80 million project by ECOWAS, and is based in 15 West African countries. Yeah.
Got you. Okay. So I know that you're also currently pursuing your undergrad, right? So I guess, how has your education informed your own personal mission?
So I study at Minerva Schools, which is a new university based in San Francisco. it's the first year is in San Francisco, and then every other semester is in a different city in a different country. So every 4 months we're sort of on the go. And how my education has informed my understanding of climate change is really the opportunity to come to the US. As someone who lived in Pakistan, I didn't have any exposure to climate change or issues of climate change. And then I got a full scholarship to, come to the US and study here. And so I capitalized on that opportunity and I got here. One of the first events that I went to in San Francisco was hosted by the Citizens Climate Lobby, which is a climate advocacy group based in Washington, D.C. and around the US. And that is where I learned about the carbon fee and dividend solution to climate change. And it was very fascinating to me. It was intellectually rigorous. It was important. It gave me a sense of, importance. And that's what triggered my interest in climate change. And then I went on to work for youth climate leaders in Kenya. Spent a summer there. It was an amazing experience. And then I went on to work for ECO, which is a climate finance consultancy based in London, and then finally at CPI. So the interest sort of kept building up and kept evolving. It started from climate advocacy to the intersection of climate change and education, sort of figuring out a sustainable primary education model in the Mugai community, which is 6 hours northeast of Nairobi, to working for a startup in Korea, wanted doing CSR for them, then doing CSR for a venture capital firm in Silicon Valley, then going on to work for a climate finance consultancy where I worked with organizations such as the Green Climate Fund and the World Bank on climate adaptation mitigation projects, to finally a climate policy initiative where I worked at the intersection of business, climate change, and entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's great. So I guess I know you listed a lot of experiences, but out of those, can you pick one that's been the most meaningful to you?
For sure, CPI, the most recent one. It was an amazing experience. And one thing that I really appreciated about my experience at the lab was that it's very innovative. They truly look for solutions or financial instruments that are innovative in nature, because we really do need to test the waters with multiple financial instruments before we make big sort of investments that can catalyze the kind of change that we want to see in the world. And so, yeah, CPI definitely.
Got it. So I guess as a final thing to end on, do you have any words of wisdom for I guess the fellow youth who are also passionate about climate change and making a difference in the world?
I mean, I can say something. I'm not sure if it's gonna come across as wisdom. Quite frankly, I'm pretty I don't know much, and I'm at the earlier stage of my career, so yeah, I guess I'll share something that has been especially meaningful to me and has driven most of my understanding around climate change, which is most of the capital in the world is in the private sector. And in order to scale up climate change solutions, we're going to need money from the private sector. And so what I encourage young people to do is to look into the intersection of the public and the private sector. Look into blended finance solutions, for example, because these are going to be especially important going forward. They're going to be they're going to be especially important because we can't do it without the private sector. Without using public money to unlock private investment, using the power of public-private partnerships, as well as financial sort of modeling structures like blended finance, which is essentially using public sector money to unlock money from the private sector. It would be very difficult to see the kind of paradigm shift that we want to see in the world with regards to climate change.
Got it. All right. Thank you so much, Haysam, for being here with me today. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see everybody next time on Inside Politicz.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, everyone. This is Christina. Thank you so much for watching Inside Politicz, and please feel free to check out the rest of the interviews on my channel. See you next time.